Okay, here we are halfway through turn 18. The Germans have just completed their turn. Taking a look at the positions on the eastern portion of the map here in Estonia, mostly, right in here. Start over here at Tartu. Been able to flip these German defenders to their combat side. Quite strong defensive positions in here. A little heavy on REs maybe, but got 2 steps left in this infantry division, and artillery more as fodder than anything. Luftwaffe step left from one of their infantry divisions, and an anti-aircraft battalion defending Tartu. So a lot of factors in that hex. It won't be easy to kick out of there. The thing you will notice of there, though, maybe not from this distance, but I wasn't able to get any supply into that position, so that will certainly cause some difficulties. We're a little bit at a premium for supplies, the Germans, at this point, so I maybe could have found a way to get a truck down here, something along those lines, but I think this eventually will be lost. We can maybe hold out for a couple turns at current state, so we'll see how that goes. We'll move down here. The units defending this hex in Petseri finally fall into attrition. That frees up that rail line. We can get a railroad unit over to this area and start converting this rail line so we can advance our supply as the Russians. For the Germans, it's bad news. All these forces are now freed up to go explore all this open, lovely terrain ahead of them. So the Germans are pulling back. Don't want to be stuck in that terrain. There is some more defensible positions with river and some good defensible bogs and forests and whatnot towards Riga. Estonians are holding their ground, as well as here at Tartu, since they cannot leave Estonia without taking a step loss. Actually, I think I accidentally did for that one there, so I have to fix that move. He left Estonia. Oh shit, what do I want to do? There we go. But yes, pulling back, we've got a nice congregation of German forces here. Pretty strong position. That's probably the strongest force we've been able to create in this area in quite some time. Still some stragglers, slower moving infantry units and whatnot, holding some of those lines forward to hopefully slow down the Russian advance. Some partisans that we rolled for here as well in our variable roll on this turn. So being realistic, the Russians are just going to roll over this. They'll be back to those positions very soon, but it's a much stronger position there. So over here as well, slowly pulling back, all infantry essentially still bogged down here because of slow movement and not wanting to flip to move mode and risk some extra losses. We want to try and preserve as much force as possible, so we are going to continue to pull back from these positions, probably to here where the pop point is, maybe one ahead of it and do something around it, but trying to get some of that force back to Riga. So that is about it for this portion of the map, but some very exciting things to cover in the west, so we will go check in with that now. Alright, so here's our positions in the west. In the last video I talked about wanting to counterattack against these units, clearing hopefully these forces from the outskirts of Riga and reopening those rail lines into Riga so we can keep the supply flowing. Obviously we've failed to do that. That was my intention. We had some units in reserve moving in this direction. Managed to pull a feint on myself in a solo game. So set up everything to push an attack in this direction, or began planning that attack. And then when it came to actually do it, after the Russians had, we had done all our barrages, we had weakened some of these forces here, and made the Russian player think we're going this way. They released some reserves to strengthen these positions, all well and good there. Then I didn't feel good about where we were at with the reserves, the movement, the strengths that we had together. Stacks just didn't line up the way I liked them. So we changed our mind and did this instead. And I think I'm fairly happy with it. I'm just happy that I managed to trick myself and something interesting's come out of it. I think it might be bad at the end of the day, but it was exciting nonetheless. So we've blown a bit of a hole through the German lines here, or the Russian lines, sorry. And we're 1 hex away from pocketing this pop point here with a headquarters in it, some supply in there as well. We just couldn't get that last hex. Had I planned a little better, maybe would have come out, but I think this is exciting. The Germans actually using this force. I really wanted to do something with them, not just have them stand there and stare at each other, and I really didn't know how to use them towards Riga anyway, so this just, happened to work out. I'm not convinced of its strength. I think you take out one of these hexes here, we have a serious opportunity, but there's a lot of strong action ratings. There's some decent strength in these stacks. The Russians are going to have to spend some supply and commit some force, hopefully pulling forces back from Riga. We can counterattack from there with the forces joining from the east, maybe to push them out. So a bit of a creative way to relieve Riga, but it could work. It's interesting as well. So the counterattack netted us 1 German loss to 12 Russians, 12 steps total. They had a lot of artillery and some strat mode units in behind the lines here that we were able to take out. 2 full infantry divisions were removed from the map as well as some armor and assault guns. So I think a successful counterattack, if you 12-1 for losses, I think that's a good day. So we'll see what the Russians can do to counter this, and yeah, well, we'll check back in shortly. Alright, so turn 18 is finished. I can tell you now that the Germans have earned another victory point, putting them at 5 on the game. But I think that's going to be the last one. Things have not gone well for them here. Could have gone worse, but it has not been good for them, as we can see here. We'll start at Tartu. Attempted 2 attacks against the Hex, forced 2 options, so the 4 action rating units out of there now, they are also exhausted for combat supply. So that should fall in the next turn. Well, it definitely will. They did force 3 step losses on the Russians, but the Russians don't mind that at all. So I think that is it for that. This initiative roll is going to be huge. That DG will remain if the Russians get the double turn here, and that will easily be wiped away. So nothing much to speak of here. Failed a barrage, so we didn't opt attacking. Pretty standard across the line here, nothing to speak of. And then we get to this. So the Guards infantry, along with an assault brigade or battalion, made an assault across the river, capturing that hex on that side of the river there, cutting off a large pocket here. We had some infantry and some armor in reserve to move up and kind of almost close the pocket, essentially have, because there's a wooded bog there. It costs 3 movement points to move into, I believe, for infantry. Yep, and prohibited to all other movement, so they're essentially trapped. Now, should the Germans get initiative, they may be able to fight their way through to them and let them pull themselves out of there, but that won't be an easy task either. So this is a train wreck. I hope we can sort something out here, or maybe we can attempt breakout and redirect some of these forces to defending here. That'll be something we'll have to mull over. We'll have to see how the initiative goes. Very important initiative roll, that's for damn sure. Up towards Riga, the German hopes of pulling forces away have backfired, so actually within 1 hex of Soka, something like that, right adjacent to it. So we're getting into the Riga pocket area, right between these river here. This river here is the last line of defense for Riga. It's getting compressed very quickly, so you can see we have some decent forces in on this side of Riga as well now. So, and still threatening Jelgava. So the real interesting point here was our counterattack. Did manage to close these units in behind our lines here, but it's not very strong. There's multiple places along the line here where we could probably push in with the Germans and get supply back in here, and get these units moving again. Whether or not they can carry on any further this way is another question. There's a few juicy targets, but the risk of losing the entire force here is very high, and the Soviet trace supply is pretty good in this area. They have multiple options. They would need to really encircle a huge force, which I don't think they can manage. They just don't have the forces to do so. Yep, bit of a shit show. This was stupid, I think, as the Germans. It was fun, but it's proved to be a little foolish. Now the steps traded on this turn were fairly even. This is just some of the units lost here. The Russians definitely hurting. No slouch for the Germans either. 2 AR-5 units, full infantry division. The Russian Air Force was immense, especially here. The 2 hexes we could capture here and here, they inflicted a step loss by rolling 11s on the air barrages, so really helped us get to this point and entrap these units in behind our lines here. So, alright, we're going to roll for initiative now, and we will see who is going to win this game. I say that because I think the Russians have it won here. Okay, so we're going to roll here. Initiative, Russians are on the red. Oh, there we go. And the Russians will take the double turn, and they are going to mess some shit up.